Of the Africa Center for Energy Policy on the phone alongside Nana Mwesi the seventh, who's the executive director at the Institute for Energy Security. Gentlemen, good morning to you both.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to Kojo and your co-panel. Good morning.
Wonderful. Here's how I'd like us to start. A quick recap of what Engineer David Asamoah, acting managing director of ECG, said over the weekend.
The truth is that majority of this debt is as a result of forex shortfall. Each month, forex alone will lose about 37 million on a monthly basis. So if you get the money and you pay, getting the dollar becomes a problem. Sometimes you even make payment like what I paid yesterday. It will take sometimes days, weeks before they get it because of the dollar. If it were to be serious, I have paid. I will just say I paid the money. But when you pay, now you have to, the banks will have to get the dollar to convert before they pay, and by the time they convert, if the dollar increases, then it means that you still have further shortfall. So with the payment, we are doing the best we can to pay, and we have an agreement with them now how it's going to be paid. ECG will be paying part, ministry will come in also, and they have had that conversation. Just yesterday in the evening, they sent me a message that they have agreed with the ministry on their portion. So if the ministry takes it up, then they resume. And I spoke to the ministry, and the ministry has also agreed. So the coming days, Sonia Asebi will be back, not with the coming days. The reason we are unable to do a full-scale schedule for them to follow is that the shortage is not consistent. As I speak with you now, right now, as we sit here, there is no schedule because today, off peak, we don't have any shortfall, not even zero. We are good. Everybody is having supply. So as we progress, getting to the peak, we'll get the figures for the peak. Then we'll be able to know the quantity we have and how to share it. But specifically with Ashanti region, if we go specifically with Ashanti region, yesterday the total load we shared was just about 130. That is nationwide, not only Ashanti, nationwide. And we distributed them according to the regions, specific regions. Ashanti was part, Greater Accra, all the regions. Ashanti had, I think, about 20-30 megawatts. I think about 25 or so. I'll get it right here. So it is not that Ashanti keeps going, but the problem with Ashanti is that to get that control, that about 20 or 25 megawatts to share. Normally, it is the cities that target more because that is where you can easily get that control. Okay. If you take it to the rural areas, then it will have to put virtually everybody up, and that is unfair.
All right, let's get to it. Ben, I mean, I heard you over the weekend as well. Talking about how government has turned itself or created this, situation where it's consistently paying bills that it shouldn't be paying, since the system should be self-funding. But the truth is, the problem is because of debt. Let's start from a position of solutions. What needs to happen in order for the next government to not inherit a power crisis?
Thanks, Pedro. I think, the solution rests with ECG, essentially. And, when I heard the engineers speak, you could clearly see that they have comfort in getting money from government to always pay their bills. And therefore, there isn't much energy to actually collect revenues or account for the revenues that are collected, effectively. And that is why we keep depending on government to pay the bills. It is a simple matter of accounting for how much power you have been given, and then raising the equivalent money to pay everybody in the value chain. For every unit of electricity that is sold, there is a component for distribution, there is a component for transmission, there is a component for generation, and also a margin for the regulators in the space. So one entity cannot collect the money and sit on it and decide to use it the way they want, or decide not to be effective enough to collect the revenue when it is their job to do that. And essentially that's where we have failed as a country to actually make sure we deliver that value at the benefit or at the distribution end of the value chain. Right. And if we don't fix ECG, its collection efficiency issues, we'll be having this conversation all the time. We'll be coming back talk about potential Dumsor, and never get it fixed. And government will continue, as we keep highlighting, continue to pay the bill when the consumer is supposed to have either paid or supposed to pay. Those who pay don't get their money well utilized, and those who are happy also stealing the power keep doing it, because there is no energy to actually deliver value to the consumer and to the Ghanaian populace.
For some, the solution is privatization of the collections, ECG collections. Do you agree?
No, the whole country agreed in 2014, and there were processes to actually deliver that, because it's essentially been government and how government has treated ECG as a slush fund for the politicians to play. So that is where they do all the kinds of procurement they want. They appoint people they want to sit on boards, in management, and they don't deliver value. So they waste resources, and government keeps paying. So we agreed in 2014 that we need to set processes in motion to get private entity in to do the needed investment and be able to ensure that power generated, transmitted, and distributed will translate into money, all right, to pay the value chain. And we went through a process up until 2018, and then 19, a private entity came in, and the whole transaction was flawed somehow by the same people who wanted to give ECG to themselves, and it had to abrogate it somehow. So it is not a new conversation. It's something we agreed that we needed to do. We are 10 years behind schedule, and the incentive to actually deliver a clean private sector participation, there is no political will to actually deliver that. And that's why we still have this problem on our hands. And if you track back between 2014 and now, government probably would have spent not less than $30 billion trying to address this power sector challenges.
Nana, what sort of energy sector will the next government inherit?
Definitely, the new government will inherit an inefficient power sector, debt-ridden, without the necessary investment put in place to revive it. It won't have that. It won't be that lucky to have the resources and opportunities this government had. Today, we have problem with our installed capacity or dependable capacity. We have problem with fuel supply. We have problem with the catch waterfall mechanism. We have problem with ETLA. And so all the levers, the necessary levers that may guarantee a reliable power supply is non-existent and is missing. And so the next government will definitely have to invest in the sector, resolve the issues relative to the inefficiencies, largely in the ECG system, to bring us to normality. And that could take more than 2 years. And so Dumsor, we said it last year, that whoever forms the next government will inherit a Dumsor situation. And it will require substantial investment, some discipline when it comes to financial management to bring us to a point where we want to have a stable power supply. So that's what the next government will inherit.
Where will this investment go? Is it mainly debt payments?
Of course, some will have to go into clearing the debt payments. But of course, the larger investment that have to be made in the distribution segment of the power sector. Ben did touch on the botched PDS ECG concessionary arrangement, a very good mechanism or arrangement that was supposed to invest in the grid, resolve some weak lines problems, transformers, capacitors, have a robust distribution segment, and we lost that opportunity. We have to go back to looking for money to fix the inefficiencies in the system. that's where largely the investment have to go. But then for the other utilities, if we want to move away from a distressed power sector, then we should look for money to resource them, because today plant maintenance are not being adhered to by the utilities. And I mentioned both the government utilities and the private utilities. They are just resorting to corrective maintenance and sometimes forced shutdown before they begin to look for resources to fix the problem. And so these are some of the things that we need to do.
Right, there are several areas to discuss. You've talked about fuel, you've talked about the cash waterfall mechanism or the debt, you've talked about ESLA and so forth. Let's start with the fuel, and I'd like to hear from both of you on this. Currently, my understanding is that our thermal plants are being fueled with crude oil, but we've all been made to understand the cheaper way to do it is gas, and we're producing gas. So why are we using fuel instead? What's the problem there? I'll start with Nana, and then I'll hear from Ben as well.
Kojo, 2017, we have had opportunity to migrate from reliance on imported liquid fuels to our domestic natural gas, which is cheaper, which is closer to us. And so we've moved away from both price risk and supply risk, quite cushioned. All that we needed to do is to ensure that our gas was flowing, and we are optimizing the use of our own gas. We've not seen any investment in the Ghana gas for additional processing trains. And so today you have a bulk of the natural gas produced from our own fields either fled or re-injected, a lost opportunity. So that's the fuel bit. And so because we're not having much from our own domestic point, and sometimes we could even have the gas, but then the transmitter, WAPCO, may refuse to transmit the gas. And we've seen even a letter last 3 days indicating that they want to undertake some pipeline cleaning and all that. That becomes a restriction of on gas flow.
Why does WAPCO refuse on occasion to transmit our gas?
It is still about the same financial constraints in the sector. Government today, as we checked, owes WAPCO in excess of $20 million. And they're also crying the same way the IPVs are crying. So once in a while, they will either restrict the flow of gas by closing their valves or resort to forced maintenance. And some of them we think it's intentional, just to get government to pay. And I'm sure government sometimes doesn't care because they believe that they can resort to liquid fuels supply, an opportunity for somebody also to rake in money. And so it is still the same mismanagement stuff we're talking about, even though we have domestic natural gas supply supported by Nigeria gas, we still resort to liquid fuel because that's where our interest is, and because we have not been we've not been sound and efficient in managing the financial space of the sector.
Let me bring Ben in on fuel and natural gas. It sounds, if Nana Mwisi is right, that we are deliberately creating an inefficiency by relying on the more expensive crude just to carry out procurement scams. Is that really what we're saying? Because $20 million just so that WAPCO can reliably transmit our gas and we can have cheap fuel seems a very small price to pay, but we've not paid it. Do you agree that this is all deliberate just so that somebody can import crude and make money on it?
I mean, the political settlement issues around the energy sector is quite deep, and sometimes you struggle to make sense of a lot of things that happen in the value chain. I mean, if you take WAPCO, for example, their bill perhaps will be one of the cheapest in the sector. I mean, the smallest in the sector, I should say.
Yeah.
Because it's about 3 million a month. So how does that even compare to 20 million without paying? So it essentially tells you that you are doing backwards about 6-7 months without paying them. All right. And the incentive to pay is always not there. So anybody can question why you're not doing that and rather procuring like crude oil for generation. All right. You don't need to have any crystal ball to look into it to suspect something is amiss in there. Beyond that, also, we don't pay on time. We don't pay the gas suppliers. So recurrently, you have ENI going to Stand Chart to draw down on LCs, where we are even now owing over $400 million. Beyond what the IPPs are talking about.
How much?
That much. Over $400 million have been drawn down on our LCs
by ENI.
By ENI, which we have to find money to go and pay at some point for gas supply. So gas that has been used to generate power and sold to consumers, we couldn't recover the money to be able to pay them, and they have to draw down on LCs for government to look for money to go and pay. Ghana Gas, I don't know what is going on in there. There are too many shutdowns for a gas processing plant, and something has to be done about it. We need to look into why that persistent shutdowns and valves and compressor issues at the plant. Now, car power cannot even generate because they don't have enough gas coming in. And also because of the debt issues with ENI, they have to curtail at some point from about 245 SCF to about 171 contractual volume so that they don't have to supply more and not get paid. That has been resolved somewhat to bring them back to the optimal production. But they are still racking up the debt, in that space. So fuel security has become a big issue because of the inefficiency of procurement and also the non-payment liquidity challenges in the sector. And if we don't fix, like I keep saying, we don't fix the distribution end to make sure that there is money to pay everybody and improve efficiency in ECG itself, we're not going to be able to fix, this problem of Dumsor on our hands.
Ben, this is Mama V. Why have we allowed ECG to do whatever it is that they like? Listening to you and Nana do the analysis, a lot obviously depends on ECG, and we've allowed them to have their way.
It's a whole, political settlement conversation. I keep saying it's not just ECG. If you unpack it, you see why they are brazen to do what they do. When politicians also go in there to take what they want. From procurement to gigs. Some are also happy to pay because at the Ministry of Finance, they decide who gets paid. And that also has its own political settlement conversation around who gets paid. Sometimes you even see plans that are not generating getting paid. And you ask yourself, why are they being prioritized, in that payment scheme? So people are happy doing things that we need to unpack to see where the challenge really is. But it's a total mess of the power sector that we need the political will to say we are giving up interest, personal political interest, to allow, power to be supplied to the economy efficiently to feed industry and consumers. Without that, there is no solution anywhere, because the way procurement is done in that space, it's just people being happy to take procurement decisions than actually fixing a problem that is so germane and important for the sustenance of the economy. If you look at the IMF program, for example, one key milestone was for ECG to at least stay current so that government deals with the old debt or the legacy debt. They haven't been able to stay current, and there's no energy to push them to stay current. And they're doing all sort of procurement. I did say even on Newsfile that if you check the procurement of ECG, there is not a single item, whether a service or an equipment, that is not 2 to 3 times at the minimum more expensive than the shelf price. All right. So why is that happening and nobody cares? Nobody is really willing to deal with this inefficiency of mismanaging the utility. And we keep, talking about government bringing money and paying for electricity bills when it has been consumed and people are actually abusing the revenue.
So, what can the people do? I mean, it comes back to us, right? Because when the light goes the most.
Absolutely. I think that is where perhaps all of us are failing. How do we demand that the right thing is done? How do we ensure that we are not sacrificing our budget? It's your tax revenue that are actually being used to pay. And sometimes when you say government has paid the bills, as if some people conjured money from their pockets. It's our money that they are using to pay bills that have been paid by the consumer already. Or somebody decides that people should steal the power and they don't get the money. We have done a lot of work in this space, from abortion meters to tracking some of these illicit connections, and nobody is taking action. There are people in the ECG, when businesses have consumed power to the tune of millions, they go and destroy the meter. They call it abortion meter, and the record is waived off, and then they bring new meters. And then debt is created, and the budget absorbs it, and it becomes who gets paid is also at the Ministry of Finance, and people are making money, and the problems keep piling up. So we need to demand that the right thing is done. We need to demand that once there is a regulator, which is the PURC, and we have seen the mess in that space where PURC cannot even regulate ECG. Once there is a regulator, we then need the private sector to be there so that the government can focus on regulating the private sector with the authority of the state, to protect all of us, and not to be part of the business and still pay the regulator who cannot regulate the business side of things. And that is the mess that we are actually creating, and it's costing us a lot more than it should, at this point.
Nana, how long until we're back in Dumsor?
Well, I don't think we are moving out of Dumsor anytime soon. Like I said, it could take us 2 years to bring some normality to the power sector. And so as long as the ECG is inefficient, to the extent that you can even find some prepaid meters that have not been recharged for a year, still having power. It tells you how deep-seated the inefficiency issues are. And so until we address the inefficiencies, largely in the distribution leg, Dumsor will assist with us. And so it's kind of combination of investment, discipline, and adherence to mechanisms that have been positioned to ensure that we are getting the needed revenue and distributing it equitably and fairly to all the power utilities. Dumsor is not going away anytime soon. And it's so much unfortunate that we get to this point, because if you look at the kind of opportunities this government had, we shouldn't be anywhere near Dumsor. And for sure, this government did not inherit Dumsor. Rather, a very good situation, very good power install capacity, a very good source of fuel, extra to back you to clear your legacy debt and also give you some additional revenue stream. You have your domestic source of fuel, a lot of combination of factors which give them a better position. But then the simple answer to your question is that Dumsor will be with us for, let's say, 2 years until we clear the inefficiency, because it may be that we needed just about 250 million in 2018, 2019 to fix the inefficiencies in ECG. Today, let's expect billions of dollars to fix the same problem, because if you defer a planned maintenance, then you are ready to undertake an expensive corrective maintenance. And so, unfortunately, Kwajo, Dumsor is not going away anytime soon, because the hole that is dug is deep, very deep. And until government leaves power and a new government is formed, you won't even see how deeper the problem is.
Yeah.
And if today you take a condition sheet from Gridco and it's labeled private and confidential, it started 4 days ago. Today, the same condition sheet that you could find even our power exports on it, they've cut it off. And people have been threatened not to release information. So bad a situation. Why is government suppressing information? Well, let's see what happens next year.
On that sinister note, I say a big